Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Managing Emotional Shock and Managing Anxiety. I'm Kathleen. Emotional shock and anxiety will be two major problems during and after the upcoming evolutionary shift. Even if you prepare, you may experience some emotional shock, but you should be able to manage this emotional shock quickly. You should be able to recognize it, immediately do your technique, and come out of emotional shock fairly quickly. This is important because people in emotional shock won't be able to function. And we really need those people who are preparing to be able to function. And those people who prepare may also have some anxiety, but again, you should be able to manage your anxiety efficiently and be able to function. So let's talk about emotional shock first. I want to start with the difference between physical shock and emotional shock. You're probably familiar with physical shock. Physical shock is basically when there's a drastic decrease in blood flow throughout the entire body. This is related to some sort of major trauma, some major wound, or some major infection. And what you see on television is that when people are going into shock, you basically lay them down, put their feet up, call 911. Emotional shock is an immediate stop of the normal movement of the kidneys. The kidneys have a normal movement pattern. One will go up, the other one will go down. And then they reverse. One goes up, the other one goes down. So you have this normal kidney movement. When the kidneys stop moving, your emotional energy body shuts down. And you will see that this is a protective mechanism. So here's what happens. You will observe or be part of some sort of emotional trauma that is so severe that the lower frequency emotional energies will be out of control. The heart will have trouble processing the magnitude and the severity of your lower frequency emotional energies. They will send this chaotic message to your heart brain. Your heart brain sends it to your amygdala. The amygdala area will become chaotic, but it will not be able to process the magnitude of emotional energies that are coming in. So these lower frequency emotional energies will be sent to your cranial brain, and the cranial brain wave will become chaotic. But again, the cranial brain will not be able to manage the magnitude of lower frequency emotional energies that are coming into your cranial brain. So the cranial brain will send two messages. It'll send a message to your adrenal glands to increase your stress hormones, but it will also send a message to your kidneys, and it will tell the kidneys to stop moving. And when the kidneys stop moving, it shuts down your emotional energy body as a protective mechanism. Now, when people go into emotional shock, they become totally detached from the outside world. They don't feel anything. They don't feel higher frequency emotional energies, love, compassion, hope. They don't feel that. And they don't feel lower frequency emotional energies. They cannot feel the fear if it's in front of them. They can't feel depression. They can't feel anger. They don't feel anything. They totally detach from whatever is going around them in the physical world. This is a problem because people in emotional shock can't make decisions. They can't problem solve. They have trouble communicating. They're just not functional. During the 3-day evolutionary shift, people who have not prepared may go into emotional shock on the first day, because when they discovered that the sun stopped moving and the moon stopped moving, first thought through their head is going to be the world's coming to an end, and they will potentially go into emotional shock. They certainly go into a panic mode, but they may also go into emotional shock. They don't go into emotional shock the first day. They may go into emotional shock the second day when they look on the news and they see that in 4 major cities and all the people in them fell into the ocean, and the cities are gone and the people are gone. And if that doesn't do it, they may go into emotional shock the third day when animals and children and other people start disappearing. Now, even if you've prepared, there's a potential of you going into emotional shock on the third day if you are invested in what's going on with third dimensional people. They're your close friends or family. They didn't evolve to fourth dimension and they are struggling, and you are emotionally involved with their journey. You cannot influence their journey, but you may feel really strongly about that. So if you start going into emotional shock, you'll stop feeling anything. Now, you'll be managing your heart rate. So you'll be used to feeling the higher frequency emotional energies. And you won't be able to trigger your higher frequency emotional energies if you're going into emotional shock. And you won't feel anything. You won't feel fear. You won't feel depression. You'll just be, detached and observing what is going on in the outside world. If that happens, then you need to use your technique to pull yourself out of emotional shock as soon as you recognize it. So remember that there are clusters of neurons outside the cranial brain. They are basically similar to the heart brain, except the heart brain is much larger and has more of a major function. These smaller clusters are dedicated to just one particular area of the body. Even before the heart brain was discovered and we knew that these cranial neurons existed outside the body for a reason, the osteopaths knew that you could connect a certain part of the body to other structures and the structures would heal faster. This was discovered in the 1950s by an osteopath in California, and he started teaching that, and there were manual therapists and other osteopaths who were using the technique to heal structures by connecting it to the part of the body that was designed to heal that particular structure. The neurons that are dedicated to the kidney are located over your aorta. So you need to find your aorta. So what you do is you find your left clavicle, all right, and then go on down. There's your first rib, there's your second rib, there's your third rib. Find your third rib, go over to the breastbone, and where there is a junction between the third rib and your breastbone, that's your location of your aorta, and that will be your neural cluster of cells that are designed and dedicated to healing the kidney. And that includes improving kidney movement. So put one hand over your aorta, put the other hand below your rib cage on top of your abdomen, and then visualize the aorta coming into your top hand and visualize the kidneys coming into your bottom hand and your forearm. And just hang out. If you are going into emotional shock and you pick up on it quickly, you should be able to pull yourself out of emotional shock fairly quickly. You'll know that you're coming out of emotional shock when you start feeling lower frequency energies. You'll start to feel fear or depression or anger, some form of lower frequency emotional energy. And once you feel that energy, you know that you're coming out of emotional shock, and then you can go back and use your emotional triggers and send a visualization to your heart brain and harmonize the waveform in your heart brain and have higher frequency emotional energies. And you will be able to get the kidneys to start resonating with the heart brain and increase your emotional frequency, emotional energies. I don't expect you to practice this. In fact, I hope you don't have to practice this. Practicing it means that there's been some huge emotional trauma in your life. Someone you really close to dies, or there's some sort of other emotional event that's horrific. And I don't wish that on any of you. I would like you to practice your hand placement. So once a day, find your aorta, put your hand over your abdomen, bring the aorta into the top hand, bring your kidneys into the lower hand, so that when you need the technique, you start to realize that you might be going into emotional shock, or you just want to check and make sure your kidneys are moving normally to prevent emotional shock, you know what to do. You don't have time to go and look at a book. You don't have time to go and look up a video. You need to know where your hand placement is. So practice your hand placement before the upcoming shift. Let's talk about anxiety. Even though you can't practice your technique for emotional shock, you will be able to practice your technique for anxiety, because anxiety is going to be it's a part of everybody's life. Anytime there's any kind of change, the body becomes anxious because we're very afraid of the unknown, and there is a major change coming. So if you can learn to manage your anxiety well before the 3-day event, it would be very helpful, because then you'll be a lot more functional. People who have a severe anxiety don't function well either. They have trouble making decisions. They can't problem solve. They have trouble communicating. So keeping yourself away from severe anxiety, and if you can just eliminate anxiety, would be great. Anxiety is pretty much managed by your heart brain. So I have a suggestion on your technique. If you were just doing anxiety, you would put one hand over your heart brain and put your other hand in your abdomen. Notice that this is the same hand placement as for the kidneys, because your adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. It's kind of like your kidneys have a hat. They have little triangular hats sitting on them, and the hats kind of move up and down on this elevator known as the kidneys. So what you can do is, if you're practicing manual techniques for anxiety, that's when you can practice your manual technique for your kidneys. Because if your kidneys are not functioning really well with its normal movement, it can also affect your adrenal glands. So find your aorta, come down 3 ribs, and then put one finger on the aorta. Put the other hand in the center so it's on the heart brain. And then this hand is the same as you did for your emotional shock. You put your hand here. The difference is now when you visualize, you're going to be visualizing the aorta coming into your fingers and the heart brain coming into your top hand. And you'll be visualizing the adrenal glands coming into your lower hand and forearm, and your kidneys coming into your lower hand and forearm. Once you have your hand placement, communicate to your heart brain and your adrenal glands that you are physically safe. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. Okay, take your 3 slow, deep breaths. And basically, you're communicating to your heart, brain, and your adrenal glands that you're physically safe. Then use your visualization, your emotional energy triggers, and increase the emotional energy within your heart brain. And what will happen is that your adrenal glands will start to resonate, and the lower frequency emotional energy of anxiety will increase to a higher frequency emotional energy of peace. And you will start to begin feeling peaceful. Now, this technique does not take the place of your prescription meds. If you are on anxiety medicine, do not stop your prescription meds. And if you have a supplement that works well for you for anxiety, then you can continue with that also. They too complement each other. When I have severe anxiety, I do my manual techniques, and if I'm not feeling calm and peaceful within a minute or so, then I use my rescue remedy, and I put 3 drops into whatever I'm drinking for the day. And I do it as long as necessary until my body just feels calm and peaceful. So I add my manual techniques intermittently with my rescue remedy, and I calm myself down, because I'm not productive and don't make good decisions if I have anxiety. This is a learning video. So I have 3 suggestions. First, I would suggest you watch this again, press pause, and write down your hand placements and your techniques so that you can learn the techniques. Second, if you haven't purchased the book Preparing for the Shift at this point, it's time to do so. These techniques are documented in that book fairly well, and you can use that book to complement what you're doing with the video. And third, if you want to talk to me about managing your anxiety or managing emotional shock or even managing your heart brain, those are all real similar topics, then email me at prepare.shift@gmail.com and to me your first name, the area of the world that you live in, and tell me that you want to talk about one of those three topics. As always, the choice is yours.